the Baen Free Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. It's a pleasure to have you along. I am Baen Associate Editor and your podcast host, David F. Sharirad. Today, we are judging books by their covers. I know, we're not supposed to, but of course, readers do. We all do. Covers are a major sales tool for publishers, and for readers, they are a window into the world between the covers that the author has created. Today, DJ Butler chats with Baen's longtime cover designer, Carol Russo. Carol has been with Baen from the beginning, actually before the beginning. She worked with Jim Baen before he created Baen Books. If you've ever seen a Baen cover, it's likely you've seen Carol's work. Today, Carol discusses what a cover designer does and walks us through some of her recent favorite Baen covers. If you normally listen to the podcast, you might want to check out the video this week. And now, the news. It's the hot as July John Ringo's ebook sale. It's the middle of summer and the mercury is rising, and John Ringo's Live Free or Die is back in trade paperback. So this month, we're offering up scorching hot deals on Ringo's blazing backlist titles. Through the end of July, get John Ringo's entire back catalog in a special discount ebooks bundle. Save over $50 off list price when you purchase the bundle, or get $1 off individual titles to round out your collection. These prices are good through the end of the month and are valid wherever Baen ebooks are sold, though the one-click bundles are available only through Baen.com. For a complete list of the titles, head on over to the website. And that's it for the news.
Welcome, Baen Free Radio Hour listeners. We've got a bit of a special treat for you today. I'm here as DJ Butler. I'm here with Carol Russo, who is not one of our authors, but who is a freelance cover designer who has been doing Baen covers since before there was Baen, is what I have been told.
Yes.
Carol, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was before it was Baen. I was working with Baen when he was an editor at Ace Books, and he left with Tom Doherty at that time they had Tour Books and Jim Baen Presents, and I was basically their cover designer because I had worked with Jim at Ace Books, and then from there he like branched out into just Baen Books, and he was in New York for a long time, and then he moved. He was in New York first, and then he moved down to North Carolina or South Carolina. I don't remember which one, and he was there until it became now Baen Books.
Yeah. So that's do I have the time frames right? That must be kind of early to mid 1980s. Is that right? Is that kind of early 80s you started doing this?
It had to be around that time because it was my first job at Ace Books, and then when I left to freelance, it was it was in the 80s, and at that time he called his books Jim Baen Presents, and then he moved over and he was in the Bronx for a while, and then he moved down. But yeah, I've been with him from before.
That's probably fantastic. I want to hear. You started telling me earlier about kind of some of the differences between what it used to look like and what now the job looks like, and I want to hear that. But just first, just generically, like what does the cover designer do? You're not the cover artist. What's your role in producing the book?
Well, the role of the designer is, I'm given a piece of art. Usually, it's Tony will like commission the art, or the art director will commission the art at a company, and they have a particular book, and then my role is to put the type on it, the title, and to like usually be able to make it feel the way it's going to be, like if it's horror, sci-fi, if it's fantasy, or whatever it might be. That's my job, to try to like make it look like the whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it's
So you're trying to communicate things like genre, but also kind of the mood of the book,
Right.
maybe.
And what well, you have to look at the cover itself and, like make sure that the colors work and this, like everything works together. And a lot of times an artist that will not give me enough room on top or not give me enough room for the titles. So we have to like do a little bit of modifying in Photoshop in order to get rid of like some, like maybe to make more room on top, add room to the bottom, because I'm just given a piece of art and that's what I have to work with.
Right. And the art's final at that point. So
Yeah, Tony,
so
pretty final. Years ago, we used to get them in sketch form, which probably was a little better because if we needed more room on the bottom, like right now, I'm working on the next More Than Honor, and I know that David Mattingly sent a sketch, and the title is there's no room on the bottom for a title. So now I'm adding something, a color on the bottom, but if in sketch form, I can probably relate that to Tony, and David could add something, some more color on the bottom. But that's sometimes it works. But most of the times I just get it as is, and that's what I have to work with.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm interested in the technological change, right? Because we're talking about like 40 years. So like there's a couple generations of book technologies here.
Well, believe it or
when you were doing this at Ace.
Yeah, no, we actually did mechanicals. Like it was
So
like,
tell me what that means.
well, yeah, anybody under 30 is never going to know what this means. It means you used a T-square and a triangle, and you actually like would, like paste everything down for the printer. And then you would send, like you would mark it up for color or for everything else. And you would send that along with the transparency of the art. And they would put everything in position. And then that changed a lot because now they don't do anything. You have to send them what they call a PDF, which they just print. They don't do any separation. They don't do any silhouetting. They don't put any they don't create the special effects. You have to do all that now through the computer. But at one time it was I used to actually hand letter, like on acetate. I used to letter the letters.
Yeah. How fun. So do you, and maybe this is like a question too, whether it's like it used to be one way, now it's another way, but if the artist presents a piece of art, do you then go to Tony or back in the day to Jim and say, look, here's what I'm thinking, here's a couple different versions.
Oh yeah,
like back and forth is there.
Yeah, what I do generally, what will happen is Tony will send me, or Joy or someone sends me the art for the cover, and then I send Tony maybe as many as 6 or 7 comps, all like within maybe different typefaces, possibly different colors, different variations. Then when she looks at it, she may like one just as is, or she may say, hey, I like the author this way, but I like the title that way. Or she may even tell me to try something else that I've done on another cover, like use a metal effect or use this or use that. No, I sent her comps, usually around 7 for a book, 7 to 10.
Yeah. So when you say comp, you mean like these are different drafts. Like here's one version, here's another version.
Exactly. What the JPEGs I sent you, that's pretty close to what a comp will look like now on a computer. It looks pretty finished. So she's getting a very finished looking cover 7 different ways. And then she can pick, choose and change, or, and she knows enough to say, oh, I want the outline brighter, or I want this darker, or, so yeah, no, it's not just one piece of art and one cover. I sent her a bunch of choices for her to see. When it's a series, it's a little tougher because then you're stuck to the series, and it's mostly color and things like that.
Yeah. So you're doing this at this point in some kind of graphic design software, right? Something like Acrobat or something.
Oh, yeah, no, I use the programs that I use most are Photoshop and Illustrator, for most of the,
Yeah.
yeah, that, like, now almost everything is done, in layers in Photoshop or in Illustrator. I like Illustrator because I guess I have the old habit of doing a lot of hand lettering, and I can manipulate. I actually redraw some of my lettering in Illustrator. So that I use for all
Okay.
my titles and authors and stuff. Photoshop is great for special effects, and for, doing whatever I need to do to get the cover, because it's all put together really in Photoshop, and very little is done in the, like, mechanical. Now, I use Quark. Nobody else uses Quark anymore. They use InDesign, and I know how to use that, but I don't like it. But that's just a format to put your cover together in. Nobody even sees what you're doing in that. Because when you send it to a printer, it's
It's a
actually
PDF.
ready, it's a PDF ready to print. And if there's a mistake in it, or you have to do the whole thing over again. They don't
Yeah.
do anything at the printer anymore.
Yeah. And you're
Yeah.
doing the front, but also the spine and the back, right?
Oh,
It's the
yeah.
whole
No,
exterior.
get to the final, yeah, it's the whole thing. The front, the spine, the
Yeah.
back. And, and we get our templates from the printer, because what happens is by that time they know how many pages are going to be in that book, and depending on the printer that's going to print it, they send you this, the sizing of the book. And every printer is different because they use different paper, different this. If it's a
Mhm.
hardback, if it's a jacket, it has wraparound flaps. So yeah, no,
Yep.
we send them the whole thing. I
Yeah.
should have. Yeah. It really is. It's, if you ever did it from the way we used to do it, it's so different because it leaves nothing to your imagination. What you send them is what you're going to get. But then again,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder, because years ago, like if you wanted something done in foil, you would tell them to make the stamping, the die.
Mhm.
Now you have to make it in your Photoshop document, and you have to send it to
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Interesting.
they don't do any of the special effects anymore.
So that's interesting. So I was wondering, as we were talking about this, the adoption of Photoshop and stuff, right? It sounds like you can probably mock up a single cover, a single comp faster, but it sounds like maybe one of the results is you're doing more comps. So you go to the editor and you say, or the director, and you say, well, here's 8 instead of
Right.
here's 2 or 3. And she then says she feels comfortable saying, well, this, but that, and the other thing. And you go back and do a ninth because the software, it's not so much that it saves you time, it gives you flexibility to do lots of comps and change them that way.
And also they can see it better. And you're right. I don't think we ever go through, oh, just like that. It's usually, oh, why don't you make the outline of this color, or the outline of, it makes it a little bit more, like for them, for like the editor, or for the, usually it's Tony. And she'll say, oh, let's see the author with this outline, or let's do this, or let's do that. And, since we're working now and she can see it just as it's going to print, it's easier for her to ask for those corrections. Like when we used to do the old way, you were just guessing. Now you're not guessing anymore. She's seeing it the
Yeah,
way,
the way it'll come out.
yeah. And
That's really interesting. Let me ask another question here. Um and I ask this, I'm completely ignorant. I've self-published some books, but I just got somebody who's smarter than me to do the cover design because I don't know how to do it. What are you aiming for? Like, as you're designing a cover, so you give me art, the art is a given. What do you want the cover to do? What are the key objectives when you're designing a cover?
well, when I'm working with it, I guess the objective, you want it to really you want it to be striking. And you want someone, I mean, like, I know I go looking in bookstores, and I, go to pick up a book, and I want it to look good enough for someone to pick up and say, hey, this looks like it might be an interesting book. And sometimes the type will do that. If the cover of a book can make you pick up a book. I know it does me, but maybe that's because I'm a cover designer. I don't know. But, it's almost like if you have a good title, if you're looking at a movie and you have a good movie and the title is great, you might say, oh, sounds like I'm going to watch this movie. Same thing with the book. If the cover looks good, you might be tempted to pick it up. I guess that's my aim. I want people to read the book.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's do this. You sent me 10 Baen covers.
Right.
And what I'm going to do is I'll just share them so that anyone who's watching this on video can see them. And if you're not watching this on video, you can maybe switch to the video podcast, or you can look on Amazon. We'll say the titles. And you can just take a couple minutes and comment on each of these and say, here's what I like about this. Here's what was hard. Here's what was frustrating, or here's what Tony and I fought about, or whatever you find interesting. How does that sound? Does that
It's good.
sound like it'll work?
Sounds like that'll work. What I liked about this one is, I like kind of the elegance of the type, because this was like it looked like a antique type of place, and yet it was blood and whispers. I like the combination of the blood and the whisper type, very, very fine type, and the blood type. And now that blood type, that's a sample of like the special effects you can get in Photoshop.
Uh-huh.
It gives you like kind of a bloody kind of look. But I like the art, and it was like it just seemed to lend itself to this kind of very elegant type, sort of fantasy, not total fantasy, but clean looking type. I just kind of like the way the cover came out.
Yeah, I like it too. So the and whispers has kind of Art Deco to it. Me.
Yeah, well, I was looking. Yeah, it does. I like that typeface. I don't even. But
Yeah.
I think go ahead.
You go ahead, please.
No. All I can say is when I look at a cover, what I do is I go through my typefaces, which I probably have thousands of them, and all of a sudden one will pop up and I say, gee, that just fits that book. And that's usually how I pick the font for the face, for the cover. This font was one of them, and I just happened to like it. And the blood, I figured, should be a little different.
Yeah. Okay, so I got a couple questions. I got several questions for this here. All right. So one question is, how much do you know about the book? Do you get summaries of the book? Do you read part of the book?
Well, sometimes
you can't read them all, right? That's a lot of books.
No, I can't read them all. Actually, some of them I design the insides of, so I do know a little bit more about them. But if not, there's usually a summary somewhere on, like I get a summary of the book, like someone will tell me, like I'll get an idea of what it's about. This one, I don't remember, but for some reason, usually when I get the cover, I'll get maybe a little bit about it. And that's all you need to know. And if I'm going the wrong way, like if I send something to Tony and it's like not the right kind of a look, she'll tell me. So, usually, she'll say, yeah, it should be more of a sans serif, or more of a this or more of a that.
Yeah. So actually, that's because that kind of means the second point here. So you've actually got at least, well, not counting blood, you've got at least 2 fonts on this cover, right? Maybe you've got more.
Oh, no,
it looks to me like.
Yeah, there's 2. Well, there's the one font for blood, and that could be partly hand lettered, and the whispers, and the author's names are the same font. And then, the other text, and I generally try to keep the other text that's like talking about the book, like totally different. Like if like a sans serif versus a serif, rather than using more. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you got two fonts here, right? I can't tell if Soldier of the Arcane is the same font. It was maybe the same font as the plug line down there. Some so tell me about contrast, because one of the issues, again, I'm not a cover design guy. One of the issues I've had when I've tried to do this is putting the font over the cover and you keep the font. It's too similar in the shade of darkness, or tell me more about that.
Well, now, if you notice under this, in the back of Blood and Whispers, I gave it a black shadow, a very hazy shadow, to pop it from the background. And that do in Photoshop. It's a blur. It's called a Galveston blur. And what it does is, you have to silhouette the type in Photoshop, and then you just, modify it and expand it. And then you make it, put black in it or whatever color you want to put in there. And then you do a Galveston blur behind it, so that you can see where the E is in Whispers.
Right.
You can see the black background there. And that's what brings it out from the background. Now, sometimes you just need a shadow, which is the author just has a shadow because he's popping enough.
Yeah. So that's interesting, and the E is a good example because there's like a bighorn sheep or something in the background, which is kind of a similar color to the font. So
Right.
The shadow helps it be really visible.
Yeah, well, that's why, like a lot of times you end up adding, a shadow, or, like, a haze behind it. Or sometimes, I just darken the whole top of the piece of art. It just depends, because I can put, a black shadow over the top part of the art and still make it transparent, but darken it.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at another one, shall we? Let me pull up. I'm going to pull up Chicks in Tank Tops here and share that one. So this is these are all fairly recent books here we're looking at.
Oh yeah, I took the ones that was desktop. Yeah. This one, believe it or not, Chicks in Tank Tops is from an old series. The Chicks In.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, is from an old series. So there we go back to the series. I had to use the Chicks In from the series, but yet it's a totally different author, but it's based on that series. So they wanted that look. But I kind of like this because it had, that sort of mixture of feminine and sci-fi, the tank tops in the metal look.
Yeah. That real hard, punchy, military looking, right? These steel brushed,
Yeah, that's
very
just
square.
right. Well, that's it's almost like a metal. The tank top says that's a Photoshop special effect. You get like it's actually look. And so years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do that unless you paint. It would have probably been a solid color, but the rest of it, the Chicks In, is very, like I said, that's part of an old series.
Right.
And
so if we go on with Chicken Chainmail, it's going to have the same kind of cursive
yes,
font for chicks at the top.
right. But we changed it, we made it a little bit more modern for the tank tops.
I like it. So tell me why you've got some combinations of white and orange in your sort of functional text here. Tell me why mix up colors there? Why not just be all white, for example? I mean, I think it would be just as legible, I think, as
Oh, it
all
would,
white.
I was just trying to bring some color into it, like, now this may have been a situation, I'm just making this up now. I may have sent Tony one with the outline chicks and shame in like maybe in a blue. And like, and she may have said, no, I like the yellow or make it yellow but
Mhm.
I probably picked that up somewhere in here. There's probably some, if you look in the background, there's kind of an orangey, those clouds and
Yeah.
stuff. And, you just pick up, sort of the colors that are in there.
Yeah.
And then, like I silhouetted her head over the tops because see, that's the kind of thing that years ago you tell the printer to do, but now you have to do it. Because you don't want to cut her head off. And
Yeah,
yet it still reads very nicely.
yeah, that's interesting. So no, there's definitely orange in the art, right? In the smoke, but also kind of the background is kind of fire.
Yeah, with the fiery background so then I just followed through with the yellows because it popped and they like some of the stuff to pop.
Yeah. Fantastic. So something like putting her, I mean, I guess really what I'm hearing is you get the cover art and then you just go show Tony some options and say, here you go.
Absolutely.
And we end up with, yeah.
I may give her like as many as, since, like I may use the basic chicks in tank tops, do different colors, not in the chicks in, because that's been like part of the series color. But, I may do different color outlines. I may do different color, edited by maybe the author was doing. And then she'll come back and say, yeah, but let's use the orange outline with the orange, in the editor. She'll give me her comments and then we come up with the final.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So speaking of series, so I want to look at Dan Cobalt's Dragon series because you sent me both the first and the second covers here. So let me share the first cover and then I want to hear your comment about, so what are some of the challenges or adventures when you're designing the first book of a series or the first book that you don't realize is the first book of a series?
Well, that was this one. Like if you look at like the angles, it really lent itself to like some kind of like angle text. And so I really went crazy. I said, oh, this really works well. And never realizing we were going to have another in the series, but it worked well. See, this is where, you take a look at the art and man, it just said domesticating dragons should be on that same angle or close to it as what was going on in the background. And it was a fun book. It looked like a fun, like series. Well, I didn't series then, but it was looked like a fun book. And so that was part probably hand lettering because I do that in Illustrator, but sort of. It's a combination of Illustrator and Photoshop and hand lettering and redoing it in hand lettering. But
yeah. And the hand lettering you're doing in Photoshop though, right? So you're getting in there and
I do in Illustrator because
yeah,
I can that one I can actually manipulate the I can manipulate the lines. I can actually redraw stuff. In Photoshop, no, what I bring in there is what I'm going to use.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can absolutely see what you're talking about. If you look at the dragon's open mouth or the angle at which the guy in the suit is kind of falling back, it's basically the same angle as the font.
Right. Then look at those, whatever they are, just the highlighted like angle things in the background, on
the lights or
lights, they just say, oh yeah, you should follow that angle or, try to follow that angle. And then I came to this.
I love it.
Yeah, I have.
It almost looks like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this was a fun book. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost, the way you've put the text on the top, his name and also the title, it almost looks like it's sort of the capital of a column, right? Because then there are those like pipes that come down.
They look, yeah, well,
It has a very,
no, this one worked perfectly as is. The next one was not so easy.
yeah. So okay, so there's this one, and then you got book 2. Surprise, there is a sequel. And let me share book 2 here. And in book 2, the graphic elements are just hanging straight up and down.
And also you see the top, there was no top. The dragon was the end of it. So what I did was I
Yeah.
extended the background because there was really, I didn't want to lose the dragon on the bottom. All the exciting stuff was going on in the bottom. And so I added to the top. And then I said, oh, wow, what do I do with this type? But then I got it to kind of blend into the background and it worked. But it took a while. It was one of those things that I said to myself, okay, now I'm dealing, and that happens. And sometimes you get a title that's like, 15 letters long and you say, oh boy, now what do I do with it? But this worked after a while.
It's good. And we can see some of the, so for example, here again, we have orange that comes forward in the logo, but also the kind of title of the series and around the author's name. But that goes with, the guy's flight suit and kind of the red rock in the background. So we can see you picking out colors and reflecting them in your design elements.
Well, and
the blue too, right? The blue of the kind of dragon.
Well, what I did, I kind of picked up the same gradation of, because it worked with these colors of the domesticating dragons. I put in the inside of this type. It worked beautifully with these colors, but then I picked up the orange and the whites and the other colors of the background. But like I said, this one I had to silhouette the dragon on top and add blue because I didn't want to lose all the art.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when art, the problem is, here again, the artist, they don't know what's going on. And, he's sending a piece of art, but the best part of it, even the guy I had to pull up the build a dragon sequence because I didn't want to lose the dragon on the bottom too.
Oh yeah.
If I brought him down or if I enlarged it differently, then you're losing some of the best parts of the art.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So part of the one challenge here is that you've committed to design or potentially to kind of a thematic design that where now the art doesn't act well. So some of the key elements of the art are right where you'd want to put some important text.
Exactly. And when an art commission, he's just commissioned. See, that's the problem with commissioning art without seeing where the type is going to be, and the artist doesn't know either. And a lot of times, a lot of artists will paint because they sell their paintings afterwards, so they don't really want to put too much space where they can't sell it as a painting.
Sure. Has to be a painting first and foremost rather than look like a book cover.
A book cover that is a painting, and that they're thinking in terms of painting. We're thinking in terms of book cover.
Yeah. How very interesting. Okay, here is another one. Another recent. This one maybe is a year or so old, but Pat Childs's novel Frontier. So we have here sort of a classic Baen spaceship cover, right? We have a lot of spaceship covers.
That's you. It's really just a basic hard side, Baen's, spaceship type, and just to show like, really just a science fiction cover. but
Yeah.
it's, now we've used the foil looking to match the ship in the red, like there again, the other colors. And, trying to pick up the look of the spaceship in there, the
Yeah.
red. Yeah.
And the font, I like the font on Frontier because the font itself suggests to me it looks a little kind of military. It looks a little kind of near future. It looks like something that we might put on like a NASA spaceship today, as opposed to something that I don't know would be on a Star Wars.
You're
Um,
Well, remember I said a lot of times what I do is I go through fonts when I see the cover, and this font seemed to work well with this.
yeah. Fantastic. Okay. I love that one. Let me grab the next one. So we're about halfway through. So this is I'm loving this. All right, everybody's going to recognize this one. Everyone should recognize all of these, of course. But here's Larry, Monster Lines. This is also a very sort of Baen-looking art in that we sometimes have kind of babes in action, and this is one. What are your comments here? Tell us about this cover.
Well, this is one of those same. This is a series. That's why I put it in. It's one of his series, and we're doing a whole line of this. But now I just did one which the title is like much longer. Like all of a sudden now you're stuck with one, but it's a series. So I follow through on the series. But I like this. The font reminds me of like Monster Hunters. Like it has those pointy. Like T's and L's, and the Monster Hunter the typeface came from another series called Monster Hunters. So it's not the same series, but it is sort of the same format series. They do. So I wanted to keep the fonts the same.
Yeah. So I mean, there's like the prequel ones, and now he's doing a prequel one in the 70s, and the shared font across all of those is one way to unite them kind of graphically, right? Because a reader can eventually look down and say, oh, is this part of the HI series? Sure, but like to your point, right? What is the cover trying to accomplish? You want to see the cover of the book, right? And so having that recognizable font.
That's my objective, is to have someone like say, oh gee, that cover looks great. Next one I'm doing though is a lot longer. It's the Monster Hunter Memoirs Fever.
Oh yeah.
So it's I got it in there. But like in other words, I keep Monster Hunter pretty standard, and then play around with the rest of it.
The other piece, yeah. And do you put, I'm not looking at the other covers, but my memory is that Larry's name, I think it looks basically the same on all of the Monster Hunter books too, right? That's part of the sort of
yeah, because he started out, when he first started out, his name was pretty small. But, but they're pretty much always on the bottom, which is unusual when such a well-known author, but all of his series are like that, because he started out I guess it started out that way. And
that's interesting. So you're saying, so if we published, like, let's say we published a Neil Gaiman book or something, which we don't have any plans for. So one thing I think you're implying is we might say, hey, Neil Gaiman is pretty famous. We should put his name at the top.
Well, most of the times we do, like most of the times we do end up putting the author's name on top when they become, pretty well known. But
yeah,
in this case, because we've done so many covers with him like that, our tendency is just to follow suit.
Okay, so I'm sharing the Tim Powers one. I'm a big Tim Powers fan. So this is kind of an illustration of the point, right? Tim Powers is a pretty big name. He's multiple award winning. He's been around and winning awards for decades. He's very prestigious. He's kind of an author's author. I am personally a huge fan. So here's an example. Put the name on the top. And I guess it's back to that basic point is what's going to grab the reader and make them pick up the book.
Well, this,
And where we think the name might be the thing.
well, with him, he draws a crowd to begin with, but I just like this book because I like the way the Stolen Skies, went on an angle. It just seemed to work so well on this cover. But now we're trying to put some special effects in the type too, rather than, I mean, it costs a fortune to put special effects. I think we did use special effects on the hardcover. We may have put foil on the back of this, but even without foil, it works. In fact, it probably,
Yeah.
it's like, and I just like this whole look of this cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at his name where you've got the shadow, but you've also got the white border. Make that because you got a complex background behind it, right? I mean, it's sort of blue, it's sort of orange, it's got some white in there, and you set up your font with sort of multiple rings around the letters, if you will, to really make sure the name is legible.
Well, I think that's, like it's important to try to get the titles and the authors, legible. And even Stolen Skies, it's going
Yeah.
over kind of dark and light, but that's why I put, like from light to dark, like from gold to silver.
Yeah.
To give it like that sort of that same kind of glow as the moon up there.
Yeah. Yep. And so I like this, you pointed it out, but the kind of slant of the letters. I assume you must have just been playing around with the comps, and that was like you sent Tony that as one possibility. And she said, "Oh, I like that. I like
Well,
the way
yeah,
the font works."
actually, right. I mean, sometimes I'll send her like things like that, and then maybe with straight type or this or that. But this one I had a feeling she'd like. But see, that's why I have to do this kind of thing in Illustrator, because you can't just use like in Illustrator you can condense and like make it go on an angle, but it doesn't work unless you start redoing some of the letters. They don't work because it's a program. So maybe your E and your N are not going to work the same way. You need to make it look like it's actually getting smaller and larger as it's going up. So you have to manipulate the type before putting it.
Yeah.
And that I do in Illustrator.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. All right, we got three more here, Carol.
Okay.
Thank you for this. I'm having a lot of. So Simon Green here, The Dark Side of the Road, and I think this is part of a series too, right? This
Yes, this is part of the series, but I happen to like this one because it the actual type, The Dark Side of the Road, has that like almost wintry, snowy type of look. And then his name has
and it's
that's okay. I'll put that. Yeah, no, it has like this is a whole series they're doing now. The Ishmael Jones.
Yeah, and we're reprinting these, right? They've been published in the UK, and we're reprinting the first, I forget how many, but it's significant, 5 or 7 or something, maybe more, and then new ones. Simon's writing new ones for us. I love the font for the title here is I guess you would say it's a serif font, but it's a little more complex than that, right? I mean the sort of the little flourishes, the jots and tittles that make it a serif font, they're curved. They look thorny. They look almost kind of organic.
Yeah, no, I
like their talent.
Well, you remember I said I look through fonts as I see a cover, and this one just seemed to, jump out and say, actually what I do is in Illustrator, I'll type in the title, and then I go through go through fonts. And then when I see something that looks really good, because you can change it as you're in Illustrator, you go up and you change the font. And when I see something I really like, this one just jumped out.
Yeah, that's pretty great. So I don't have any other covers in the series, but like how much, I assume that for the other books, his name, like the fonts, for example, would basically carry over and the color schemes would be different and the placement may vary depending on the art, but you'd sort of try to make it look like it's all consistent.
His name stays consistent
Okay.
on the on the things. Now the Simon Green, that stays, may vary, the color may vary, and the titles, but they work, they all work. So this is a series that works no matter what I put it in, because the title and the author are in type on top, and the art comes in usually where I have enough room.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think, because I have a bunch of other of his covers on here, I'm sure that I've done that are still, that are recent, but Haunted by the Past, I think, is one of the last. Yeah,
you've probably got several books in the same series done all pretty quickly.
Yeah, they're quite see, the Haunted by the Past, all I did on that one, because Haunted was, I just blurred the type a little, but basically the same, type, and I blurred it a little. It's a little blurred here, but on that one, the shadow is blurred.
Interesting. Okay, here we go. Next to last, Tim Zahn. The first thing that strikes me is how square these fonts are.
It's a totally different look, but it worked on this one, and it works on the other ones in his. This is another series. This was the first one. I didn't know it was going to be a series, but it's become a series, and it works on all of them so far. So it had, I think I was looking at, there's that little creature that's like on the side there, and it just looked like that kind of a, he's a next to the green girl,
the sort of lizard,
the kind of lizardy thing, and somehow the font sort of reminded me a little bit, but I was looking for the sci-fi version of it.
Yeah, no, I can see that. He's got a very kind of square, blocky.
He and it turned out that it worked on all the other series, thank God. But
fantastic. Okay, one last one. Here we go. One last one. I got you sent me a Wen Spencer cover, so I'm gonna pull up the cover to Harbinger.
The reason I love this one, it looks so, like fancy, so fantasy. I mean, the colors are, everything about it is like otherworldly.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because first of all, there's like gears in the picture. And if you look at I agree with you. It looks like like the light makes it look like she's in a magical portal, right?
That's why, if type is sort of like metal looking, not metal looking the way the other one, almost like a fantasy. I did that in Illustrator, but in this one, I think we used foil on everything in the background. This is the only time I think foil would work. Sometimes it doesn't, but yeah, I picked it. It is, but the colors make it look so, the art looks so fantasy looking.
You know, it's interesting. I agree. I like that. The other thing this cover sort of looks to me like is it looks like it could be like a metal album cover.
You're right.
And of course, like there's plenty of fantasy in heavy metal, right? Like that's not those two things have a lot in common. Um, but Harbinger looks like that could be, you know, an Iron Maiden title
You're,
on an album.
you're right.
Um,
But it, actually, that
with,
we did another in this series, and that's
yeah,
the font we used. But this works so much better in this cover, believe it or not. I can't even remember the name of the other. It was there was a series. See, it's the Elf Home series continues,
mm, yeah.
and the first one had that font, but this, I don't know. Maybe it's the colors in it. It just, that purple.
Yeah,
And I'm
it
not a
really came
purple,
with them.
not a purple person, but this one I liked.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonder. I have read this book. I interviewed Wen about it for the podcast, actually. And so I read the book, and it's kind of a metal book, to be honest. I mean,
It's
it's, you know, like she is a kind of a mechanic. That not Wen, the character is sort of a mechanic. So she invents like a hover bike, and it's in Pittsburgh. So there is this whole kind of like edgy blue collar thing with elves and, you know, ogres who are like Japanese samurai. So like the font's really delightful. I think it really is. It really does the feel of the book justice. Having read this one, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's great.
Um,
Now I didn't read it, but I,
yeah,
like just the feel. See, sometimes it's just the feel I get from the cover. And, there
yeah,
again, this was part, but the colors in this, and if you notice, it's hard to see, but behind Harbinger, the actual outline is fuzz. It's blurred a little to give it like that kind of like glow.
yep. I can see that. Yeah,
But
very, very cool. Carol, thank you for sharing that with us.
well, you're welcome.
Um, well, listen, is there anything else that I mean, we've been talking for a bit here. Is there anything else that you think we should cover that we haven't? Is there anything you want to tell readers or Baen writers about, you know, what you do or your covers?
I think we've pretty much covered it. I mean, I love doing this stuff. So I've always loved working for Baen. It's the company itself is great. Well, you know that. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's not just another. I've been in, with other publishing companies, but not the same as Baen.
yeah,
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 it-
yeah.
it's a different kind of company, and I think maybe that's why they're successful. The people usually love what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it shows, Carol. There's a lot of love in your work. This has been great. I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Carol.
Thank you. Bye.
And now we bring you our audiobook serialization of Tinker by Wen Spencer. Inventor girl genius Tinker lives in a near future Pittsburgh, which now exists mostly in the land of the elves. She runs her salvage business, pays her taxes, and tries to keep the local ambient level of magic down with gadgets of her own design. When a pack of wargs chase an elven noble into her scrapyard, life as she knows it takes a serious detour. Tinker finds herself taking on the Elven Court, the NSA, the Elven Interdimensional Agency, technology smugglers, and a college-minded xenobiologist as she tries to stay focused on what's really important, her first date. Armed with an intelligence the size of a planet, steel-toed boots, and a junkyard dog attitude, Tinker is ready to kick butt to get her first kiss.
Lane's house had a massive front door with leaded glass side lights extending the entrance out another 2 feet on either side. The doorbell was an ancient device. One turned a key located in the center of the door, and the key spun a metal spring coiled inside a domed bell bolted to the other side. Tinker had broken it as a child. Last year, she had fixed it in an act of adult penitence. She spun and spun the key now, making the bell ring unendingly. Lights came on, starting from the lab in the back of the house. Lane came up the hall, her figure distorted by the lead glass and the shuttle accident. The xenobiologist had trained to study the life in the seas of Europa. Crippled, she'd found a second chance studying the alien life of Elfhome. "Who is it?" Lane called as she came. Tinker stopped ringing the bell. "It's Tinker." Lane opened the door, blinking in the flatbed's headlights, leaning heavily on her crutch. "Tink, what in the world? This better not be another Tengu you're bringing me." "A what?" "A Japanese elf, related to the Oni. Sometimes it looks like a crow." "I've never brought you a crow." "In the dream I had last week, you brought me a Tengu and wanted me to bandage it. I kept on telling you that it was dangerous, but you wouldn't listen to me. We bandaged it up, and it turned you into a diamond and flew away with you in its beak. I'm not going to be responsible for dreams you had." This was the way conversations tended to go with Lane. Tinker was never sure she liked talking with Lane. They were never direct, easy-to-understand conversations, and were thus an annoyance and a treasure at the same time. Lane pulled an umbrella out of a stand by the door and stepped out into the wet to thumb it open. "Well, the phones haven't started working yet, so I might as well deal with this emergency now. You couldn't have picked a worse day to bring me something to treat. If this weren't shutdown day, I wouldn't be coming to you with this." At the flatbed, Lane collapsed the umbrella, set it inside the chest-high door, unlatched her crutch, put it beside the umbrella, and then reached up and swung gracefully into the trailer. Lacking Lane's height and reach, and with one hand nearly useless, Tinker scrambled up in a less dignified manner. Running off the flatbed's electric, Tinker had only managed to set up 2 lights. The dimness hid the worst of Winwolf's condition. Still, the sight of the bandaged elf seemed to shock Lane. "Oh my," Lane said, "it is a Tengu." "I am not a Tengu," Windwolf whispered. "Close enough." Lane shrugged, picking up her crutch. "What happened?" "He was attacked by dogs," Tinker said. "A pack of them, really ugly and bigger than wargs. They were magical constructs." "They were foo dogs," Windwolf whispered. Lane limped to Windwolf and eyed his many wounds. "Foo dogs? Can Tengu be far behind?" "A good question," Windwolf sighed. "Do you understand the strictures of the treaty between our people?" "Yes," Lane said. "Do I have your pledge that you'll abide by it?" "You'll trust my word?" "Tinker has vouched for you." Lane threw Tinker a concerned look. "I see. Yes, you have my word." "Word about what?" Tinker asked. "The treaty allows for simple first aid." Lane scanned the equipment connected to Windwolf. "It theorized that since we can interbreed, humans and elves must be 98% to 99% genetically identical. But then we're 90% identical to earthworms, so it's not that amazing. Except that this is an alien world." "We're that close to earthworms?" "Yes. Frightening, isn't it?" "How close are earthworms and Elfhome earthworms?" "Do you know how many species of earthworms are on Earth?" Lane eyed the power sink. "Of course, primates are also 98% identical to us, and we can't interbreed. Has anyone tried?" "Knowing humans," Windwolf murmured. "Yes." Lane laughed, looking amused and yet insulted. "As a scientifically controlled experiment or a sexual perversion?" "Both." Windwolf earned a dark look from Lane. "What does that have to do with anything now?" Tinker asked to distract the two. "The point is that the elves want to keep it all theory. Lane said. "It's against the treaty to cull any genetic samples from an accident victim. It's why Mercy won't treat elves." She shook her head. "This is going to be tricky. I'll need him in my operating room to properly treat him." Tinker considered. "I have longer leads. We could leave the sink in the trailer and run the magic into your OR with the longer leads. There might be a drop in power, though." Oil Can peered through the AC slot from the truck cab. "If I take down a section of the fence, we can back up almost to the OR's window." "Oh, we can't," Tinker said. "We'll drive over the flowers and ruin them." "A man's life is more important than flowers." Lane brushed the objection aside. "Will the spell let you disconnect and reconnect?" "I am not a man," Windwolf whispered. "Elf, man, close enough for horseshoes," Tinker said, shaking her head in answer to Lane's question. "I can print a second spell and activate it in the OR. We'll have to scrub his chest to get all traces of the old spell off." "Horseshoes?" Windwolf asked. "It's a game," Tinker told him. "Oil Can and I play it at the scrapyard. When you're better, I'll teach it to you." "Okay." Lane limped to the door. "Let's make this happen." Tinker printed off another copy of the spell and found longer leads. Oil Can found help at the observatory in the form of astronomers. They took down much of the picket fence and eased the truck to the porch. Luckily, Lane had a hospital gurney in her lab, and they wheeled it over a ramp into the trailer. After Oil Can and two of the postdocs slid Windwolf onto the gurney, they wheeled it as far as the present leads allowed, which took them inside the foyer of Lane's grand Victorian home. There they let him sit, while Tink threaded the longer leads out the lab window. Then came the mad scramble of disconnecting leads, pushing Windwolf to the lab, moving the truck, cleaning Windwolf's chest, applying the spell, and reconnecting the leads. Windwolf lay still as death on the gurney, even after Tink activated the spell. Is he dead? Tinker had been entertaining herself with thoughts of Windwolf's aristocratic reaction to flinging large metal horseshoes at a metal peg. Would he even come see how the game would be played, she had wondered, or would he vanish out of her life like he had done last time? The thought of him dead and unable to do either sickened her. Oh, please, no. And then after that, an even more horrible thought. Oh no, the life debt. She patted her shirt pocket, and the cancel spell crinkled reassuringly. There was even magic left in the sink to power the spell. Lane pulled on latex gloves and then pressed a hand to his neck. No, he's hanging in there. Barely. Tinker sniffed as blinked-away tears made her nose start to run. Lane looked at her strangely. If he dies, Tinker offered as an excuse for the sniffling, I'm screwed. Lane frowned at her, then swung the brilliant light over to shine on the elf's face. Wolf who rules wind. She used his full true name in Elvish, seemingly stunned to immobility. You know him? Lane? Lane looked at her. When are you going to start taking notice of things beyond that scrapyard of yours? There are two very large worlds out there, and you are in an uncommon position of being part of both of them. Speaking of which, Oil Can you see if the phones are working? I have several hours of data to upload while we're on Earth. These food dogs. They have fangs, like a cat. Yes? These puncture wounds must have been made by the fangs. There is crushing damage from the teeth between them. I'm going to treat all this with peroxide or they'll go septic. They weren't genetic constructs, more like a solid hologram. When I hit them with the electromagnet, they unraveled back down to the original creature. Their breath smelled like... Tinker searched her memory, now that she didn't have one of the beasts breathing down her neck. Like incense. Food dogs are actually food lions, protectors of sacred buildings, Lane said, temples and such like. They're supposed to scare demons, Oni. I thought you said Oni were elves, related to the Tengu. Elves, demons, spirits. Two cultures rarely have one-to-one translations. So you're saying that these bites were made by holograms? You're guessing there's no bacteria involved because they weren't eating, breathing, real creatures? Solid illusions, possibly. Oh, who the hell knows? I'd rather be safe than sorry. We have another... Lane glanced at the lab clock, which read 6:10. 18 hours. The thing about animal bites is that they will go septic if you don't stay on top of them.
That was another installment in Wen Spencer's Tinker. And that's it for the podcast. Thanks as always to Audible.com and podcast theme composer Ruth Judkowitz. Praise, thanks, and gratitude to Carol Russo, and good night, Tony Daniel, wherever you are. This is David Afsharirad coming to you from a soundproof bunker somewhere deep in the heart of Texas. Join us here next week at the hammering heart of science fiction and fantasy, and keep reaching for the stars.